Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Just before I get into the subject matter of this, I just want to make a comment. I've noticed a lot of the comments and posts sort of placed below the videos have been disappearing. They'll appear and I go to look at it 5 minutes later and it's gone. I don't know, YouTube, I guess, or some algorithm or AI is deleting a lot of your comments. So I didn't want anyone to think that I'm deleting them because that's not the case. Talking about revolution now, I guess one way of looking at the globalist or the situation in the Western world today is that the revolution has already occurred, and it happened over a period of 25 to 30 years, and because of that, we didn't notice it happening. And the revolution has actually already occurred in the West, and what the globalists are now doing is cementing and putting in concrete their power and control over all of us, and then just moving us into the next phase, which, whether it be unwittingly or whatever, that we're powerless to stop in any way. Now, revolution is it's sort of been depicted in history as being a violent, sort of convulsive act that happens sort of suddenly, and it sort of goes from nowhere and peaks sharply and then dissipates over time. So the French Revolution is an example. Now, there are sort of political disputes or taxation disputes that are billed as revolutions. The American Revolution, for example, I don't think that was a revolution. I think it was a civil war over really a petty dispute over tax, and it ended up that the American people and the people that had prosecuted the war from the American side to the American colonial side to begin with were paying taxes infinitely higher than anything the British had ever remotely contemplated. So it was a huge defeat in certainly in the initial sense anyway. And the liberties gained were very minor because the American colonists were already some of the freest people in the world anyhow. So I wouldn't bill that as a revolution. In terms of revolutions are sort of, if you like, a more from the bottom or the middle up, then the French Revolution would satisfy that requirement. And to some extent, it would in the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917. Now, what are the requirements of a revolution? If you're going to have a revolution, the idea is that the revolutionary or the revolutionaries want to seize power. Now, they want to kick out the other guys, but they want to seize power. Now, whether they kill them or evict them, banish them, or simply put them out to pasture, they want to get rid of the old guard in one form or another. The more ideological sort of they are in terms of zealotry, then they'll try and kill off the people that were there before. In the French Revolution, if you look at the people that were the main stirrers and agitators, they were middle-class lawyers and journalists like Marat, Robespierre, and Mirabeau, and others who were again lawyers or journalists and pamphleteers and otherwise agitators. Now, they were people that felt they were sort of a little bit left out of the elite circles, and while purporting to represent the starving masses, weren't really, as far as I can tell, that concern. Marat was to some extent, but that was as much to do with his own background. His father, I think, had Spanish and Sardinian ancestry and was not accepted in the quite snobbish sort of Parisian atmosphere, and so he being the son of such a man, he felt that his talents were not sufficiently appreciated purely on the basis of snobbery. So it was he wanted to get back at those people who had peered down their noses at him. Robespierre to some extent as well, being like a provincial lawyer, and Mirabeau just being a general sort of firebrand. And there were plenty of those in the French Revolution. they purported to care about the working class masses, referred to generally as the sans culotte, without socks. I guess you could sort of interpret that. So they had the 3/4 level, 3/4 length pants, but not the socks to go with it. Now the French agricultural sort of sector had a couple of pretty poor harvests back to back. So there was not only a shortage of bread, but the price of bread had gone up, and there were various sectors, various people who were trying to profiteer handsomely from it. And the government failed to act, failed to import enough grain. There were failures administratively all around, and so the starving masses were pretty stirred up and irate, and so the conditions for all the dry brushwood, the incendiary conditions were there, and of course it was ignited. And there are a number of sort of slow moving steps, if you like. It wasn't a foregone conclusion when the French king met the Estates General, which hadn't been summoned for well over 100 years, met the Estates General to deal with the issues of taxation and other administrative issues, and the idea of electoral reform and things like that. The king was invited, and if you look at the sort of recorded interactions of the day, they were still quite deferential to the king. The idea of chopping the king's head off was still quite a long way away, and the idea of the people on the right of the king were more concerned with, let's slowly work this out with agreements and legal contracts, and let's do this within the framework. Not that they wouldn't update the framework, but let's do this within the framework we already have. And when then you people on the left with the radicals, well, let's tear it all down and let's start again. So the revolution, the French Revolution, is sort of gradually, again, slow walked up, probably over more than 12 months really from that point, to the extent or the point where mobs are running around and people being arbitrarily guillotined, again through kangaroo courts and so on. So the hallmark of a revolution is not only seizure of power and removing the people that were in power, the king and the aristocrats, and there was a lot of power concentrated in the king. So when the king was gone, then it created an automatic vacuum that even the aristocrats around them sort of couldn't fill, and so the mob filled, and eventually you get people like Napoleon Bonaparte coming up and in effect reinventing the monarchy, just in a different name, and putting different clothes on it really. But so you remove the people in power, but also there's the breakdown of law and order. This is one of the key. The laws are considered as illegitimate because they protected the aristocrats, is the argument. So we're going to have arbitrary law, so we can grab any aristocrat and kill them based on any allegation or no allegation, because we fucking feel like killing them. So there's a number of hallmarks of revolutions that we saw again in the Bolshevik situation, where people were arbitrarily arrested, arbitrarily murdered, and arbitrarily taken back and shot and all this sort of thing. But if you're going to have a revolution, you've got to control the printing presses, in other words, the flow of information, and that's the key. That's considered absolutely key. The flow of information is key, and you have to control, or at least remove the previous controllers from power, and then bribe the mob with more bread and various diversions. Now, if you look at what's happened since 1990, it was even sort of moving into place before then. There's been a gradual replacement. Politicians that represented the people and were accountable to the people have been gradually replaced. Slowly but gradually, they've all been replaced. And the people that have replaced them are now reporting to the globalists. They are employees of the globalists. They pretend and go through the theatre of representing the people and going through elections, but they don't. The party machinery that selects who will stand for what electoral districts, that's completely controlled by the globalists, and they make sure their nominees or people that are irrelevant to the power game are put in there. And if you see the IQ of some of the people that are in Parliament since the globalists started their takeover of all Western parliaments. You staggered at some of them. They've got an IQ of like -5 million. Some of these folks, and the way they talk and act and behave, they've got they should be sweeping the floor at McDonald's or working as greeters on the front of a Walmart store. But the globalists decide, well, these people are the best ones to relate to the folks we want to dupe and dispossess. So let's put them in there. Very basic, vulgar, working class people. Let's put them in there to represent and that'll make the people think that we've got one of our own in there. But in reality, it's just a stooge. So the globalists took over the body politic. They also took over all the media establishment, so the flow of information. And arbitrary law applies. This is the third phase of it. So they can arbitrarily say that anybody that questioned a certain election should go to prison. Whereas, people that questioned a different election 4 years earlier, well, nothing should happen to them. So we've got a clear distinction in the rule of law that it applies, to people that disagree with globalization and the apparatus and structure of globalization and the means through which globalization has been implemented. Anyone who disagrees with that or questions it should go to prison. Whereas people that support the globalization, whether indirectly, and contribute to the demoralization and the destabilization of Western society, which is what the globalists want, then those people should not go to prison, should not be charged. So you've got these different tiers of justice: arbitrary justice, politicized political courts, brazenly so, politicized courts. And this, in effect, is the revolution. This is what a revolution sets out to do. Now, because armed mobs, well, they did in the case of Antifa or BLM, but because armed mobs didn't roam the streets doing these things or affecting this, that it was done really in background over a period of time and through just corrupting people and bribing them and doing whatever, then the globalists were able to achieve really all of the requirements of revolution: take over the body politic, take over how election votes are counted and the ballots, take that. They completely control that now. I don't think there will ever be an election not controlled by the globalists in the future anywhere, unless it's in some irrelevant bullshit place in the middle of nowhere and they don't care about then that much. But otherwise. So the media, so the information flow is controlled. This is why the globalists get hysterical over independent social media. It's something they don't control, and that outrages them. They have to control the information flow. That's absolutely vital, and any revolutionary government will do that. And they're quite prepared to kill off people that don't go along with it. And then controlling all the other sources of influence. That could be TV shows, movies, museums, whatever, any think tanks, any output or influencing agent in the community has been taken over by the globalists. Education, of course, being primary among them. So these are all the things that a revolutionary government or the revolutionaries attempt to do, will need to do, in order to take the level of control they think they need to implement their new world order. And the globalists already have done this. They've already achieved it. They've achieved all of these things. Every single requirement of the revolution they've achieved. You look at all the revolutionary, every box can be ticked. So I would argue that we're actually in a post-revolution era already. The globalists they've got it. Now, there was a bit of a shock when Trump got elected, Brexit, these sort of things, but they've got around all of that. They emasculated Trump with constant harassment of nuisance lawsuits and impeachments and this and that. And Trump and his team just weren't ready for this. They could have vigorously fought back, but instead they sort of just seemed to accept that their Trump's policy platform was going to be compromised. They would get very little done of what they wanted to get done, and they kind of seemed to I don't know. They seem to sort of accept it in some ways, or at least were so thrown off balance by it that they weren't able to mount an effective counter offensive to what was a very organised, very vigorous, exceptionally well funded attempt to destabilise Trump's presidency. Brexit, the globalists effortlessly bypassed that. The will of the people, fuck the people, and just to punish the people for their their voting for Brexit. They tripled or quadrupled the immigration rate. That'll teach you, motherfuckers. So I would argue that the revolution's already occurred, and we're now in the post-revolutionary period where the globalists are cementing their control. Sure, Trump and Brexit took them by surprise, but now they're sad. The globalists are of the view that free and fair voting can't be allowed anymore because it might create an uncertain outcome, and that can't be tolerated. So, in my view, in my opinion, so they're now just really cementing their control and removing any perceived obstacles to that cementing of control. So I put the question: are we actually already in a post-revolutionary period? And are we really needing to look at things in terms of full-on counter-revolution if we're to stop it? You've been a Tasselist today. Your Pushback Challenge. Thank you for listening.